Welcome to the Know Your Ship podcast, presented by eHub. I'm your host, Frank Dolce. You were telling the story, you're 8 years old, and you have this experience, and you overcome this, and now you've had this, and then you're in college, and you're doing this again. It feels to me like all of these experiences are leading up to and the way that you analyze all of the experiences in your life are leading up to what you've now created in this book, The Art of Significance.
Yeah, it was a 30-year process.
Yeah. Right. And so you call it the 12 highest universal laws that you have gleaned over your 30 years, all over this lifetime of experience. Okay, so let's get into this. Let's get into this book. And I know there's lots of stories you talk about. One of the stories you talk about when you were, in the spy plane and you're looking at the curvature of the Earth, and what am I doing? What is my place here?
Yeah.
Why am
let's start there.
Why? Okay, let's start there.
So I go up into space, come back, I'm just fascinated by astronomy, astrophysics. I read every word I can find by Wernher von Braun, who's the father of NASA. He's the one that identified the mathematical equation and the algorithm that allowed us to put a man on the moon, the Apollo. Mm-hmm. And if you think for a moment about the movie Hidden Figures, who celebrated Katherine Johnson as the human computer who worked for NASA. The movie stars Kevin Costner as the world's most prolific scientist. He's running the team, and the entire historical backdrop of this movie is when we were launching Mercury 7 with the astronaut John Glenn, and he was going to orbit the Earth 7 times, and then they had to figure out a way to fire the rockets to position that space capsule in the perfect position and the perfect entry point to make it through the Earth's atmosphere and land in the Indian Ocean at a specific place, because the capsule soon fills with water and the astronaut would drown if the rescue ship didn't show up within minutes. It was that finely tweaked. Mm-hmm. And the scientists could not figure out the mathematical equation that would allow the space capsule to re-enter the atmosphere. And if you study astrophysics, if you understand astronomy, the ozone and the atmosphere that surrounds the Earth, if you don't enter it at the specific angle at the specific velocity, you will ricochet off the atmosphere, and John Glenn would have been lost in space and died in a space capsule cruising around in someplace in the darkness. And they were caught up in this dilemma. They could not figure out the exact mathematical equation. And Katherine Johnson has this epiphany and starts writing on the glass wall. And she finishes and has the solution. And Kevin Costner is the chief scientist. He goes, "Wow, that's Euler's theory. That's old math." And Katherine Johnson says, "No, it's sorry." Yeah, and Katherine Johnson says, "No, it's right math." So I look up Euler's, and Euler's was a 17th century Swiss mathematician who created the mathematical equation on how to calculate the movements between two objects that are passing, moving, the capsule, the Earth. Mm-hmm. And that was that specific mathematical equation that allowed John Glenn to sign off on it and say, "I trust her, launch me," and the Mercury 7 mission was successful because of it. And that led eventually to us putting a man on the moon. Mm-hmm. So my point is, I became so fascinated by the laws of the universe, the law of gravity, the law of resonance, vibration and energy that we learn through the law of attraction, the law of the harvest, we reap only that which we sow, the law of relativity, the law of physics, the law of mathematics. But what law governs all of those universal laws? It's the law of obedience, which means obedience is the highest law of the universe because all other laws are governed by it. You disobey gravity, it doesn't matter if you understand it or believe it, you step off a 20-story building, you're going to die. So obedience is the highest law of the universe. And that became so apparent to me. So as I'm starting to study, I realized that the universe was organized by a specific set of laws, irrefutable laws. And it doesn't matter if you agree with them or not, they exist. And when we identify that law and then obey that specific law, we will reap a specific reward attached to that law. Non-negotiable. And when we disobey that specific law, we suffer a specific consequence related to that law. And when you start thinking in terms of the actual organization of the universe, then, as men of faith, we have to acknowledge, according to Wernher von Braun, the father of Nassau, that there is a master organizer. And once we buy into the fact that there's a supreme being, which I prefer to call Almighty God, and a master organizer, once we understand that, then we put him in the position of he was the master organizer of this universe, created and organized with a specific set of laws. He created gravity. He created relativity. He created mathematics. He created physics. He created the law of the harvest. He created. And therefore, the highest law of the universe is obedience. And now let's backtrack and see how that applies to us in life. So here's where I believe. So if obedience is the highest law of the universe, which I believe it is, and everybody would agree, and I quote from the space experience that I teared up as an expert in the words, an eyewitness to the words of Einstein, who said, although the concept of a supreme being and a master organizer is complex, we must embrace the mindset of a young child who walks into a large library and says, surely someone must have written all these books. And within moments, I became an eyewitness to the reality that we're more than mere mortal beings living on a small planet for a short season. If we're the only ones here, this year is a lot of wasted space. I wish every one of you could experience what I experienced. Whoa. So if obedience is the highest law of the universe, the supreme being, God, I choose to call him, he needed to test our obedience. So he gave every human being free will agency, which is the most important gift of God. He will not force anyone to believe. He won't force anyone to go to heaven. He won't force anyone to go to hell. He won't force anyone to do anything. He's saying, basically, I'm putting you on this earth for an experience, to figure it out, have some fun. Crash the tricycle instead of, totaling the family car. I mean, be selective in the mistakes you make, but just have an experience, because it's all here for your good to give you experience. So to test our obedience, he gave us free will agency at choice at all times. I can choose to do this. I can choose to do that. And quoting the Bible, straight is the gate and narrow is the way that leads to eternal life, and few there be that find it. He will not force anyone to believe or keep the commandments or whatever theology you might have. He won't. That's beautiful. And to protect our free will agency, so free will agency tests our obedience, but to protect our free will agency, that it's always in play, he established an opposition in all things. You got to have darkness to appreciate the light. You have to have justice to appreciate mercy. You have to have sickness to appreciate health. You have to have death to appreciate the sanctity of life. And because he created us in his image, and he knows that we're human with free will agency and an opposition in all things, he knows we're just going to be boneheads and flipping horn dogs and everything else you want to throw into the conversation, and make some serious mistakes. We're going to be tempted by the world, tempted by the universe, tempted by fake news. It's going to be a crazy experience, and we're on our own. And because he didn't want to leave us on our own, our Heavenly Father gave every person born into this world an inherent ability to discern truth from error, right from wrong. We commonly call this ability our conscience. And if that's true, which I believe it is, our conscience will never fail us. Only our desire to follow it decreases as we continue to do the wrong thing. So the analogy is, if the 5 of us in this room leave and enter a different room in your beautiful building, and that room stinks so badly that our eyes water, our noses bleed, and our ears ring, and we're repulsed so so deeply that we are kicked into automatic gag reflex. You realize if we stay in that smelly, stinky room for 5 to 10 minutes, it no longer smells. We have become desensitized, and it becomes the new norm, the new normal.
Yeah.
And how many people forget what happened to us in COVID and how that desensitized us into so many things that we knew were very important that now is a new norm. And on the positive side, it was a reset for so many of us. It was a great chance for us to say, no matter what my past has been, I have a spotless future. Get up and go again. You can't always control what happens, but you can always control what happens next.
Yeah. You know, not to stop you, but I've had that experience. I used to work in a hospital, and now maybe hearing this, I would have managed that experience differently.
Yeah.
Because you used to work.
Yeah.
You used to work, and we used to go in to some of these rooms in the hospital, and it was exactly as you described. And the coaching we received was, when you walk into that room, take a big, deep breath, because then it won't be so bad. So you have to get over the initial shock.
Wow.
And then it won't be so bad. But what a great analogy for life. Well, so now you're just going to take a big, deep whiff of all the nastiness, and then it won't be so bad, rather than, wait a second, this could be, how do we make this better?
Exactly. I love it. So now, as a speaker, I don't want to just tell the story. I don't want to just have people say, wow, that's pretty cool that you've dissected the purpose of life the way, but what is the application? What's the plan of action?
Mm-hmm.
What is the step-by-step process to test this question about, so what do you do next when you're devastated, when you're down, when you've gone through the loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, devastating divorce, a transitional experience is a divorce. A significant emotional event is a devastating divorce. There's a difference. What do you do? So I created the parable of the kite. And that's also in the beginning, the orientation, kind of the introduction of my book, The Art of Significance, Achieving the Level Beyond Success. So I'm really proud of this because it helps us put into play what I just described as far as obedience, free will, agency, opposition, and all things in our conscience that will never fail us. So the story, a father's out in a park with his little son, and they're flying a kite, and the kite's way up in the blue, cloudless, windy sky, and the dad says to his son, what holds the kite up in the sky? And his little boy says, the wind. And his dad says, the wind doesn't hold the kite up, the string does. Confused, his little boy says, Daddy, the string doesn't hold the kite up, the string holds the kite down. And his dad smiles and says, if you think so, let go of the string. And the second his son lets go of the string, what happens? The kite flutters in the wind, and then the wind blows it to wherever it wants to take it, suddenly in control. And the kid starts chasing the string. And the kid chases it, and finally he steps on the string again, catches it, commits to tightly holding onto that string. And what happens to the kite? The kite climbs again into that blue, cloudless, windy, blue sky and becomes what it was meant to be, what it was born, what it was created to be, a kite. So now the kite represents our dreams, it represents our goals, it represents our desired results, our projected outcome. Personally, in our family, in our, the 9 categories of life, physical fitness, continuous education, deeper spirituality, emotional stability, social networking, financial literacy, family togetherness, fun and recreation, and charitable giving. Plug and play anything you want in that kite. It represents, what do you want to accomplish? How do you become better today than you were yesterday? What's the deal? And the wind represents the opposition in all things. So if you're going to start an entrepreneurial idea and you want to kickstart a new business, remember there's no such thing as a financial crisis, only an idea crisis. Idea is to create income. So come up with that dream, that kite idea. But then make a list of all the opposition, negative family, friends, no support. Lack of capital, the reason why companies go bankrupt or go out of business is because they're undercapitalized. We know that. What do we do? Make a list of every single one of your opposition in all things. And it could be, the list goes on and on, but be specific. Itemize everything. Lack of time right now. I'm overwhelmed. I have too much on my plate, blah, blah, blah. The wind becomes the opposition in all things. The string represents every rule, every regulation, every law, the 12 highest universal laws, every principle that you must obey in order to control your dream against the opposition in all things, the wind. Letting go of the string represents that you did succumb to the temptations of the world. You went to too many bad movies. You listened to brutal, violent rap songs. You hung around with guys who you were trying to be loyal to your wife, and you hung around with guys who had no idea how to spell fidelity. You were drinking too much, whatever the case may be. You succumbed to the temptations of the world and broke your promises. You stopped keeping your commitments and stopped obeying the laws. And no one likes to be told to obey. What we have to do as parents, as coaches, as employers, as friends, is inspire our children, inspire our friends, inspire our coworkers to choose to obey, not because it's expected by others, but because it's demanded of ourselves. And if you don't believe that obedience is what protects our free will agency, visit any prison and see those who are incarcerated misused their free will agency, stopped obeying, and that's why they're thrown in prison.
Yeah.
So obedience truly is the highest law of the universe, and free will's agency is the greatest gift of God. So the little kid lets go of the string. It represents there's too many people in his life saying, let go of the string. You're supposed to take an hour for lunch, and you're out with your buddies, and they're like, let go of the string. You don't have to be back in 60 minutes. You can stay out for 2 hours. Nobody will know. We don't have to join this country club. Let's climb over the fence and swim in the pool. Somebody's whispering. How many people in our lives are whispering in our ear all the time? Let go of the string. And now the kid chasing the string around the park represents that his conscience kicked in. I should have not let go of the string. That was the stupidest idea. Dad, I can't freaking believe you did that. Or, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have hung out with these guys. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I went out with the boys. We got drunk, and I did some stupid things, made bad decisions. Conscience kicks in. I am so freaking stupid. And if you list all the rules that we need to obey, it's pretty easy to say, my wife wants to leave me because what did I do that made her want to leave me? And now, through the law of forgiveness, which is the 12th law, the last, the bookend law, obedience and forgiveness. If you hold a grudge and remain angry, it's like you're drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Forgiveness is about us, not about them. Once you understand that and can get someone that you love to forgive you, pretty soon you realize which rules and which laws you broke, and you will never do it again. The kid, conscience kicks in, he catches the string, and what happens? He's learned the lesson. I will not do this again. I might make some other mistakes, but I'm never going to do that again. And he commits to holding on to the string once again. Why? Because it's the only way he can control his family, control his love, control his life, his dream, his goals, his outcomes, the kite, and fight against the opposition, which is no longer opposition because it keeps the kite alive, keeps the kite afloat. In aviation, we take off against the wind. In aviation, when you take off in a storm and you pop out of the clouds, it's always clear on top. When you understand it's always okay in the end, and if it's not okay, then it's not the end, you can hang in there. And then the coolest part about it is the 2 life lessons that I share with the parable of the kite. What this young boy now learns are 2 things. Number 1, never again does he have to go fly a kite with supervision. No longer does he have to have his manager at the office or his leader at the office be his babysitter. He knows what he's supposed to do. He has an intensified sense of integrity and personal responsibility and trustworthiness that I'm going to do exactly what you think I'm doing at work. I'm going to be the guy that my mom expects me to be. I'm going to be the husband on the road that my wife wants me to be, that she prays for me to be. I'm going to be that guy and do the right thing simply because it's the right thing to do. Suddenly I'm motivated not by others, but because I got to be the real man. I have got to be everything that I say I am. If I'm not the same off stage as I am on stage, then I have no credibility.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, the most beautiful thing of all, is that, and let's remember this, no matter how many times we let go of the string, we can always catch it again. You never say never, ever. You never give up on your loved ones. You never give up on your dreams. And if your dream of playing professional football and baseball is raped from you, it's taken away because of a boneheaded decision by a coach in a stupid drill on a football field, you got to let go of it and say, what has happened to me? I wouldn't be sitting here today if I hadn't been paralyzed all those years ago. Which makes my paralysis one of the very best things that ever happened to me. Don't misunderstand me. Not my paralysis, but who I became because of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said earlier, I thought I was a football player when in reality that's just who I am. That's just what I did. It's not who I am as a man.
Yeah.
And as I said last podcast, when we identify ourselves in terms of what we do instead of who we are, we become human doings instead of human beings. Unacceptable of significance is what we seek. And I don't think I'd be your guest on this podcast if all we talked about was business.
No.
I don't think that would be any reason for anybody to tune in, because anybody can talk about numbers. Remember, facts tell, but stories sell. So I appreciate you having me here.
Well,
let me say one last thing.
Absolutely.
So anybody who's in a confused state of life, anybody who feels devastated, when you use the parable of the kite as that template, all you have to do is say, what part of my life is broken right now? What part of the parable of the kite is not in play? Oh, my dream's not big enough to get me to wake up early and stay up late. Oh my gosh, the opposition is way too strong. I got to figure out a way to deal with it. Oh my gosh, I've stopped obeying this. I've stopped living by this principle. I've stopped doing this. I've stopped doing that. I've succumbed to the temptations and the craziness of the world. What must I do to fix it? What do I need to obey right now that will turn it around? How can I hire a mentor? How can I hire a coach who can come in and tweak my system right now to turn my revenue from $30,000 a month to $60,000 a month? And it's still the same system. I just had to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all in that parable.
Yeah.
Think about it. What did I let go? What did I stop obeying? What do I have to keep obeying? What do I have to start doing again? Oh, I'm so sick and tired of having people have to look out for me and check up on me. I'm going to be that man that I say I am, and I'm going to step up and exceed expectations every time.
I love the way you describe that. You have 12 universal laws in the book, and we can attack this a couple different ways. I don't want to go through it chapter by chapter because people need to go and read the book. And
I need the money. Please buy the book. Art of Significance, Achieving the Level Beyond Success at your local bookstore.
Yes.
Now.
Well, people need to read the book, because if we sit here and you tell them the book, you're never going to get out of it what the book will teach you.
Yeah.
And so I've read it twice now, and I just told you about riding in this bike race, and there were times in that bike race when I'm thinking to myself, am I living a significant life? Am I following the laws of being significant? Even so the point I'm making is, in whatever activity you happen to be engaged in at the moment, you can ask yourself that question. Are you living a significant life? And that can help. I mean, for me, it was like, these are the things I need to do better or focus on, and it was really meaningful. I'm going to just list the 12 laws.
Right. And let me just quickly say as a preamble that the reason why I went into so much time about the organization of the universe and the parable of the kite is because that lays the foundation. Now, the rest of the book is identifying what rules, regulations, principles, but most importantly, universal laws that constitute that string in the parable of the kite.
This is the string.
Yep.
So the obedience sits on top. Then there's perseverance, stretching, trust, truth, winning, doing right, harmony, acceptance, being needed, covenants, and last but not least, forgiveness. Now, I'll let you talk about these any way that you want. I'm just going to preface it by saying, as I look at that list, and as I've read through this a couple times now, no one law is more important or less than the other laws. You have to be, to be as significant as possible, you have to be unified in all of those things. That's the string.
Yeah. But if you begin with obedience, the second law in sequential order on purpose is perseverance. Because if you only selectively obey, you're going to suffer the consequence of disobedience. So I'm flying cross country in a United Airlines jet, and I'm in first class, and all of a sudden we hit unexpected turbulence, and the plane drops 500 feet. And they had served the meals, and so the meal trays slammed to the ceiling, and the pilot had come over the PA system and said, "Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened in case of unexpected turbulence." And how many of us get on an airplane and we put on our seatbelt for takeoff, but then we say, "I'm uncomfortable, take it out, blah, 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 blah." And of all the people on the plane, 12 people did not have on their seatbelts, and they were slammed to the ceiling. And we had to make an emergency landing in Louisiana, and the ambulances came to the side of the plane and carted off these folks who had serious neck injuries and serious back injuries because they selectively obeyed. So obedience is, I'm all in. Obedience is, most of the time, the things we need to hear the most are the things we hate to hear the most. Selective obedience in a religious perspective is how many people are saying, God wouldn't say that, God wouldn't demand that, God wouldn't do that. Who made you God? God can do whatever the heck he wants to do. He's God. Don't create God. And one of the 10 Commandments is, thou shalt have no other gods before me. I'm sick and tired of running into so many people who think they're God. No, I'm going to create my own belief system. That's not right. That's good. I believe with that. I believe that. That doesn't coincide with my lifestyle, so God couldn't have possibly said that. It's as ridiculous as my buddy in college who said, I read drinking alcohol is bad for you, so I stopped reading. That's what's happening in Washington, D.C. That's what's happening in our world. Don't tell me that. I'm just going to stop agreeing. I'm going to stop going to that church because I disagree with that. I'm going to stop believing in God altogether because I don't agree with that. Quit making yourself God. Either there's a God or there's not. And he says, this is what I expect of you, to live the life that you deserve. Not keep the commandments, not obey the commandments. That would piss me off. Enjoy the commandments. Live the commandments. See the benefits of walking on higher ground. That's not controversial in my mind. I hope it wasn't to your viewers. So the next law has to be perseverance. But how many times in our lives when we're doing our best and someone says, you got to be patient. Things aren't going our way. Just be patient. And even in a theological perspective, how many times do we hear some preacher, some pastor, some bishop say, it's meant to be. Just be patient. Be patient. It's God's timing is not your timing. Really? That doesn't make me feel any better. I'm not going to fire up. Patience allows us to never begin. Patience allows us to subconsciously and consciously wait our turn, believing that it was meant to be, that there's nothing that we could do. It was supposed to happen. No. Perseverance is patience with a purpose. So you don't mindlessly wait your turn, you proactively take your turn because you know why you should. So that's, in essence, the idea of perseverance is that your why is bigger than your why not. You've got to hang in there for the blessings. Faith precedes the miracle. You shall receive you receive no blessing until after the trial of your faith. So I'm in the stadium thinking about killing myself, and I became a much stronger human being, resilient for the rest of my life, because I finally pulled my head out, crawled over the fence, and decided that was a bad idea. So how many times have we had an argument with our spouses, and the making up is so much more fun. That's why we fight on purpose sometimes, because you know, my wife's a lot more forthcoming when I'm repentant. Sorry, Tess. And it's the losses that we learn the most from. You're an athlete, elite athlete. What happens when we win? Hey guys, stay out of trouble, man. We'll be,
Yeah.
get in the training room, take care of some bumps and bruises. We'll see you on Sunday for our workout.
Mm-hmm.
When you lose, you take your bra off and hit somebody. And we're there running all night long. We're running all day long. I mean, you learn so much more from your losses.
Mm-hmm.
So bring them on, baby. Perseverance is patience with a purpose. So a class example that should motivate people. So there was a gentleman by the name of Ronald Wayne, and he worked at Atari computer kind of game company with Stephen Jobs and Stephen Wozniak way back in the day. And in 1976, they decided to start their own company, and they call it Apple Computer. And Ronald Wayne is the senior in that trio of individuals. He's the old man at 26 years of age. And so he writes the first operating system for Apple Computer, the first Apple Computer. He designs the first Apple logo, and he writes up the first contract. And because he's in the process of licking his wounds from a failed entrepreneurial idea, he, in that operating agreement, decides that he doesn't really want to go along with this because it's a partnership and he's liable for any situation, any financial situation that might go south.
Mm-hmm.
So he decides in a meeting that he's going to relinquish his 10% stock in Apple Computer for $800 because he's afraid of the liability if this doesn't work. Stephen Jobs and Stephen Wozniak, they take this operating system and this logo, the first operating manual that Ronald Wayne wrote, and they take it into the marketplace. They find investors, and they're up and running in the manufacturing side. And so Ronald Wayne decides he's going to relinquish any connection with Apple Computers for $1,500. He has no claim to anything else. And in 1976, Apple Computer, Stephen Jobs and Stephen Wozniak, they generate $174,000 in revenue. And they continuously grow it. In 2023, it was the first company in the history of their industry that was valued at over $1 trillion. And had Ronald Wayne kept his 10% stake, his 10% stock, had he persevered, because his why was bigger than his why not, today he would be worth $60 billion. There's so many stories about perseverance. My perseverance, as I shared in the very first podcast, when I fought my way back from the paralyzing injury, when I was devastated, if listeners would recall, I thought I spiraled downward until I thought I hit rock bottom. And I want to regurgitate what I shared because it's valid in our discussion of law number 2, perseverance. Now that I fought my way back to a 95% recovery, the 3 most frequently asked questions are, what do you mean you thought you hit rock bottom?
Mm-hmm.
No matter how hard or it gets, no matter how bad life gets, nobody ever hits rock bottom. We hit rock foundation. We hit rock belief. We hit the baseline core values and governing principles in which we were raised. Number 2, why did I go to so many different doctors? I went to 16 different doctors, 15 of whom told me I would not get better, I would never recover. I kept going from doctor to doctor until I found one who believed I would get better, who reminded me that knowledge is power, but it has no heart. Remember, we don't learn to know, we learn to do. And reason leads to conclusions, but it is emotion that leads to action. But number 3, what took me so long to recover, to get better, that's the relevance to this law number 2 of perseverance. I stayed paralyzed for 14 months because I was asking the wrong questions. I was asking the doctors how to get better when I should have been asking myself why. Once we answer why, I figured out the how to becomes clear and simple. And here's the explanation of perseverance from a physiological perspective, a scientific perspective. When we only focus on the what and the how, we only engage the brain, we only engage the head. But when we add to that a passionate why and a compelling want, We connect the head with the heart. And physiologically proven, our blood pumps more rapidly, our brains fire, and our muscles magnify, which maximizes our performance. So when perseverance is played out as a true universal law that I've got to hang in there, it's something worth starting is worth finishing, not always, but if it's the right thing and we focus on what matters most, which is what lasts the longest, we will hang in there until. And those who have succeeded in music and songwriting, those who have succeeded in business, are those who have outlasted their competitors, outlasted their opposition in all things, hung in there and learned the lessons. That's just law number 2, and it's part of our lives. It's part of our existence. If you don't have perseverance, none of the other laws matter.
Well, that's
perseverance to obey, then it doesn't exist.
That's the amazing thing is, we're only talking about law number 2, and you can see and understand why and how it's so meaningful. And it's not just personal, it's through all aspects of your life, living a life of significance. And whether you're an athlete, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're in a corporate job, whether you're bussing tables at a restaurant, all of these things apply to your life.
Yep.
So I want people to go out and read this book. What is your message? Like, how can you encapsulate all of this stuff in a compelling message? Like, someone might say,
what you're asking me is, how can I stop talking about all the 12 laws because we're running out of time? Could you cut to the chase?
Not well. I would love to do a 12.
I want to do
12
it,
step of the. But we'll have to reschedule that. If we want to go step by step, I would love to do that. But
there's 2 of them that I would really want to hone in on. The next one, law number 3, stretch, and law number 6, winning. So we'll do that hopefully before we call it quits, and then you can bring me back.
Let's do that. Okay, give me the. Hey, why should I go pick up Dan's book? Like, the art of significance.
Because it simplifies life. I just simplified the organization of the universe. And there's too many people whose lives are completely out of control and they don't know what happened and they don't know where to start to fix it, to put the pieces back together. The parable of the kite tells you exactly what part of your life is broken. Now fix it. Obey. Identify the opposition in all things. One of the steps of perseverance, at the back of each one of my chapters, I have 4 action steps, which most books don't have. This is what you need to do right now after you read this chapter. And one of the things we need to do, in going into law number 3, stretch, I list my balance wheel, and I've quoted that a couple of times. That's where you find it, the 9 aspects and 9 areas of life. But what you need to do is just take 3 steps. Number 1, what one thing can you do right now with your circumstances to move the needle, to improve your life, to become better today than you were yesterday in each one of those 9 aspects of life? What can you? Don't say, I'm broken. Okay, fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens most of the time, I'll tell you what happened to me. I blow up my knee. Okay, so I have 7 different surgeries on both of my knees. I blow up my knee one time. Be a big boy, don't cry. And I'm hanging in there, and it hurts so bad, and I'm limping that now I've got back pain. So now I finally break down and I go to a back doctor. And he can't fix it because it's not a back injury, it's my knee. Scratch where it itches. If your nose itches, you don't scratch your elbow. Too many of us only focus on the symptoms, and we think, okay, my heart's broken, or the sky is falling, We think that's what's causing our pain. No, we need to go to the real source of the pain. Once I went to a knee doctor and he fixed my knee, my back stopped hurting. When we have trouble in our relationships, something else is going on. When someone comes up to me after a speech and said, you suck. Why did you manipulate my emotions and make me cry? That was not right. You're wrong. I felt offended. In my mind, I have to ask, what is going on in her life, in his life, to have to put me down to make themselves feel better about who they are? So I'm not offended. I'm just asking my question, wow, they've got some unseen pain and they've got to scratch where it itches.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could help them, but apparently I didn't. So at some point in our lives, we've got to go to the real source of pain. And that's how we persevere. We can't just deal with the symptoms. You know, if we're out with the mosquitoes and all we do is scratch the mosquito bite, man, it's not ever going to get better. Pretty soon we give up. This didn't work. At some point, you've got to figure out the plan. So number one, what one thing can I do right now to make this better? Number two, who do I know in my life that I can solicit as an accountability partner who will walk? If I'm out of shape and my first goal is to walk to the mailbox, who can help me? Don't go spend money on a gym. Walk around the block with an accountability partner. And then number three, what resources are required? Time and money. I'm so overwhelmed. You know, in the book Atomic Habits, James Clear illuminates with the world that we can improve our overall performance if we just increase our current abilities or capacity by 1%. And we leave it at that. But if you dissect and go a little deeper, there are 1,440 minutes in every day. 1% of 1,440 minutes is 15 minutes a day. What could you do to better yourself if you're willing to wake up 15 minutes earlier than you normally do? And I accomplished so many things before my spouse and children woke up. So it's me, my time. If you're selfish in the morning, you can be selfless for the rest of the day. There's no excuse. I have so much on my plate. No, you freaking don't. Wake up earlier and stay up late. Do it. You can do that. I can't. I need my 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
No, you don't. I've got 5 hours of sleep, and I seem like I'm pretty present right now. I might fall asleep driving home, but at least I'm present in the moment. You know what I mean?
You're right now.
So those 3 questions, once you take action, let's talk about that for a second. It's easier to act your way into positive thinking than it is to think your way into positive action. It's not the sugar that makes the tea sweet. It's the stirring. It's the process.
That's good.
Think about what we need to do. We've got to take action.
You know, as you're saying that, keep thinking about what you're thinking. I'm just going to add this in here because I had a little elbow issue because my golf swing is terrible.
That's good. Bring your checkbook, baby.
It's awful. It's awful. And so then I was resting, you know, and then it wasn't getting better. But then what I figured out is if I had movement, then it would feel better. And then it would cool down and then it would be sore. But then if I had movement, then it would. And so I called the physical therapist and I said, "What's going on? Like, rest, no rest? What's the answer? Because when I move it, it feels better." And you know what she said? Motion is lotion.
I love it.
And that's what you're talking about. You have to get up and act because that's going to move you into positivity. You can't sit there and think yourself into positivity. Motion is lotion.
You get in an argument with your wife, and it's called the rebound rate. Who's going to put their pride in their pocket first to acknowledge, let's just talk about this. This is stupid. It's not about who's right. It's about what's right. Come on, babe.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that her rebound rate's quicker than mine, but I'm working on it. It's important. There's so many easy fixes for what's ailing in our lives.
Yeah.
And that's what I illuminated with the art of significance. That's the nutshell. It is. I'm so proud of it. It's got timeless wisdom and insights that help you simplify the complex and just say, yeah, first of all, you're enough. Second of all, you're not enough. And goal setting is basically acknowledging that I'm not enough. So get over it. What are you going to do to better yourself? You go to a social networking event. Tell me about yourself. Well, I'm the type of person or I'm the type of person that. That's the wrong message. You're saying, this is it. I'm a complete finished product and I'm never going to be any different. Are you kidding me? I want them to know I'm a project, worth hanging in there, and I'm going to become better because of you. You're going to leave me saying, I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. And I'm going to leave you saying, I like me best when I'm with you again. I want to see you again, and together we rise. That's relationships.
Yeah.
It's cool to, meet interesting people and blah, blah, and how small Utah is, how small our city seems to be.
Yeah.
And it's not really small. It's because we're hanging around with significant individuals who believe what we believe, so they choose you and choose me, not just somebody who does what we do. And so our circle of influence seems to be small. We seem to think Utah is small, Salt Lake City, our communities are small. No, it's because we're hanging around with like-minded people who have values and have heart, who have passion, who have perseverance, who understand the law of obedience. Likes attract likes. It's pretty cool. If you hang around with 5 broke people, you're going to become the 6th. If you hang around with 5 negative, whining, complaining, blaming people, you're going to become the 6th. You put a hard-to-catch horse in the same field that needs to catch horse. Most of the time, you end up with 2 hard-to-catch horses. And I love to say that. When you put a healthy child in the same room with a sick child, most of the time you end up with 2 sick children. To be moral to the story, to be significant, disciplined, and healthy, you need to hang around with this disciplined, healthy, and significant.
You also talk about having a personal board of directors, which I love.
Oh, yeah.
And now you can identify, and it's up to you. Like you can't go out and identify 5 losers.
No.
I mean, you go and you identify, and maybe this is part of your stretching, is like you identify the people that are going to push you a little bit, make you right. Dick Vermeil, who's a great football coach, they asked him one time what his secret to greatness was, and he said, paraphrasing, I just hired people better than myself.
Yeah.
And that's along the lines of your board of directors. Tell us about that.
So, classic example. So, I'm a very devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, man of faith. You know that. Mm-hmm. And yet I love hanging out with you because you're not of my religious faith. You're a friend of another faith. You're deeply spiritual and remind me, which I remind the world, that religion is for those who are afraid to go to hell. Spirituality is for those of us who have already been there. So you and I connect as men of faith at the spirituality level, not necessarily the religious tradition, theological level, which is way cool. So as far as a personal board of directors, even though I have so many friends who say they've left the church and they have all these freaking lame excuses and all this BS, and 93% of those who have left the LDS church have become atheists and all this other crap, I cut them some slack, but I still need to be around those folks so I can have an influence on them, and I don't judge them and allow them to have an influence on me, because every single one of these folks that I still am great friends with who say they've left the LDS church are extraordinary human beings. Mm-hmm. I love them to death, no judgment, but their impact on my life is just as extremely important as my impact on their life. And then through perseverance, someday they'll come back to the church. So in the board of directors, you find someone who does not have your same religious tradition. And you find someone who does not have your same political aspirations. I'm a cut and dried, bona fide conservative. Mm-hmm. When people ask me if I'm a Republican, I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes we have to admit that some far right wingers have hijacked our conservative party, and the same thing with the liberals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Far left wingers have hijacked the Democratic Party, and at some point we got to have a discussion where we come together and just say what is best for America, regardless if it's Republican or Democrat. And my dad always taught me, who was a cut and dried Republican, my dad always taught me to vote for the right person. Mm-hmm. And I was an alpine ski racer with Gaddis Training Organization, GTO, and my ski coach was Mayor Ted Wilson. And that was the first time I voted Democrat as I got to be voting age. Mm-hmm. And, Matheson, I mean, the list goes on and on. Even though we're predominantly Republican state, I've voted so many times across the line for the best person. And with the election coming up, we better figure out what to do. Because when I travel abroad and everybody's like, how can the greatest country on the planet come up with these 2 freaking lame candidates? Can't America come up with 2 better people to represent the greatest and strongest country in the world? And right now we're caught in an election. There's nothing we can do about it except vote for the right person and the right policies that are best for America. Screw Democrats, screw Republicans, screw conservatives, screw liberal. We've got to make a decision of what's best for America, and I hope everybody goes to the polls and votes.
I do too, and I hope it's, like you said, the issues, as I see it, are on the edges of both parties.
You got it.
And the more you lean out to those edges, the worse it is for America.
So a personal board of directors, you want somebody who disagrees with you but has the intestinal fortitude and integrity to stop focusing in on who is right. It's not opinion, People have stopped talking to each other based on who we're going to vote for President of the United States. That's just so shallow and childish, and the mainstream media keeps perpetuating that.
Sure.
We need to focus in on what's right, not who is right, what's right. So a great analogy about perspective. Let's say this side of my hand is painted white, this side is painted blue. What color's my hand? White, blue. Who's right? You all are, depending on what perspective you have. What we have to do in order to communicate at the deepest levels of empathy and true total understanding is to be willing to come around on the other side of the hand, come around on the other person's side of perspective and acknowledge that yes, it is white or yes, it is blue, which turns every argument about who is right and an agreement on what is right so we can move forward together. I hope everybody remembers that during the election cycle.
Absolutely.
But that's still part of your question. So the board of directors, you need someone that's not of your religious tradition. You need someone who's not of your political persuasion. You need someone who's older, who has actually walked the road, who's traveled the road before you, who's done exactly what you've done. Exactly what you've done. Who can teach you what you need to do. And you just find someone who's younger than you, who gives you that perspective from a high-end technology perspective, from the stereotypical millennial mindset, which is admirable. Is I'd rather have stamps in my passport than furniture in my house. They're kind of free and going for the gusto, and that was a phase in my life.
Sure.
I've spoken in 76 countries. 6,000 stages, so it's kind of a millennial mindset. What's next? How can I fire up? What am I going to do? I don't want to die with my music still in me. And then make sure you have a mix of female and male.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And the way that you laid that out is to have all of those different perspectives. It's really hard to be well-rounded when your only perspective is right here between your ears.
Yeah.
So I love that. And by the way, this is all incorporated in the art of significance.
Except the religious part.
Except the religious part. That's the beauty of it. Okay, now you talked about winning. And I want to get to winning before we cut each other off here today. But it's a great chapter. It really resonates.
Great loss. So here's what happens. You're in my audience, and I love to yank people's chains and say, how many of you agree that it's all about team? And everyone will raise their hand, because I'll milk it. This is the participatory part of my program. Come on. And as soon as they raise their hands, I say, wrong answer. And they're like, really? I say, yeah, it's not all about team. Teams lose, Cleveland Browns. Teams lose, my Oakland Raiders. Teams lose, New York Yankees. Whoever said it's not whether you win or lose that counts probably lost. Are there companies going bankrupt right now as we sit in this podcast studio? Yeah, and they have a team. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we've been bamboozled and so many teams lose is because we've been bamboozled to believe that there's no I in team. Whoever came up with that idea, there's no I in sucks either. There's no I in last place. There's no I in loser. But if you want to play that spelling bee game, there's no I in winning, but there's no I in team, but there's two I's in winning. The first I represents independent, individual preparation. What are you willing to do on a daily basis to make yourself better? Don't let me be the weak link. Mm-hmm. I've prepared so hard. Under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your level of training. That's why we train and practice and prepare so hard. Pressure is not something that's naturally there. It's created when you question your own ability. And when you know what you've been trained to do, there's never any pressure. Get over it. Fire up. Prepare. Let me trust you. Don't let me be the weak link. Don't let them. I refuse to let them run through my 3 feet of real estate and score a 98-yard touchdown and defeat my team. Don't let me be the weak link. I will prepare. You can trust me. Second I in winning is interdependent collaboration. What one thing can I do on a daily basis to make my teammates better, to make my family, my coworkers, my team, everybody around me better, saying I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. So bottom line, yes, you were right. It is about team. They don't give Super Bowl rings out one at a time. But the teams that win have the greatest number of individual I players on them.
Yeah, in
that chapter, I created the 10 commitments to building a winning team. And if each of your players on your team subscribed and lived by these 10 commitments, I guarantee winning will take care of itself.
It's the greatest number of people heading in the same direction, all committed. It's not the guy that's like, well, I'm part of this, but I'm kind of slacking over here. It's the concept of getting the right people on the bus. Like everybody has to be individually committed to go together in that direction. And if you could get, if your team has the most people going in that direction and someone else's team has 50% of the people, same numbers going in that direction, which group is going to win? And so I think obviously with our athletic background, all of those concepts and ideas resonate. But it's not just on the athletic field. I mean, it's in
Yeah.
the corporate setting.
So
It's in your
remember this.
personal life.
Everybody should write this down. We win and lose as a team, but we win and lose because of individuals. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I'm going to. A couple years ago, National NCAA Football Championship. Georgia against Alabama. Alabama's playing well. Georgia's playing well. And at regulation, the score's tied. They go into OT. Alabama has a bona fide All-American DB cornerback. Awesome. And I pay attention to him during the game. He's made tackles. He's broken up, had an interception. He's played at the All-American level. Unfreaking believable. And you're thinking, okay, he just increased his draft status by two rounds. Going to the overtime. Georgia quarterback drops back, throws a pass, touchdown, they win the game. The All-American DB who was supposed to guard this wide receiver, he was so far away, he didn't even make the television screen. When they showed the replay, I'm like, he must be like on the third row eating a hot dog. He must have saw his girlfriend as a cheerleader and sat down. He screwed up so badly, and it was only one play. Oh my gosh. He played like an All-American the entire game and let down one play. So what do we learn from football? Not every play is designed to score a touchdown. One play sets up the next play, which sets up the next play, and eventually that receiver, that running back, breaks loose for a 30-yard scampering, scores the game-winning touchdown, and defeats the opponent, and the team wins. Momentum is only as good as your next play. Nothing more insecure than the halftime score. You only know you're a champion if losing hurts worse than winning feels good. We can get into all the philosophical concepts of what makes you a real champion. But you cannot take off a play. So what I describe in the book, and which came from my observations and my interviews, I've had a chance to interview the top collegiate football coaches in the country and the top NFL coaches in the country. I just used my whatever my status is as a journalist or as a speaker. Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, the list goes on and on. Who was the Fisher DeBerry, one of my heroes, Old Air Force Academy. I played against them too. And they all agree that winning or losing a football game boils down to 6 plays. And if you go to a game with me, we'll sit in my seats, and I'll drive you crazy, because all the way to the game, I'm going to go, okay, we've got to look for the 6 plays. We've got to look for the 6 plays. We've got to look for the 6 plays. And now we're sitting there on the 50-yard line, 4th row, eating our J-Dogs, and I say, Frank, is that one of the 6 plays? You're like, yeah, probably. One of the 6, whoa, probably. But then the reality is, on our drive back to my home, we know exactly what the 6 plays were. And as a sports commentator, you never use that analogy, but I love the way you described, and you actually were able to hone in on these game-changing plays. And I always wanted to phone in and say, yeah, there's only 6 of them, man. Keep going. There's 2 more. Because that's the reality. Just from the experts who all, the collaboration of my interviews state that there's 6, every game boils down to 6 plays. So, DB, All-American, you can't afford to take off one play, and he did. You cannot afford to take off one play. So when I go in and work with teams, and I've worked with most of the teams in the NFL, and I tell that story, they're not going to invite me into training camp and I go out on the field with my shorts on and be coach. That's just not part of the deal. But they've got to understand the concept. And the coaches, I'm so proud of, so often the coaches have taken my suggestion. what I do is I talk to the team before, and then they go out, and after every drill, they're supposed to grab the guy they went against. If I'm a defensive end and I'm practicing my pass rush against an offensive tackle, and I'm trying to push him to his rich airs, and I would go at it every single practice. He was a all conference All-American. What a stud! What a great human being. And I would give him my best moves, and he would give me his best pass protection. We'd push each other, and he'd always hit me in the helmet after, and I'd hit him in the helmet after. Thanks, guy. Well, now you take it to the next level. You grab the face mask, and you say, was that one of the 6 plays? So they start putting it in their subconscious. Wait a minute, I can't even take a play off in practice. Is that one of the 6 plays? Because obviously I've been to pro camps before, and the veterans, it's a classic example. The DBs show up, the veterans, and the rookie trying to make the team, and the veteran trying to keep his job. The veteran finally gets that rookie aside and says, calm down, man, slow down, you're making me look bad. What you want is a veteran who's going to push you, and you want a rookie who's going to push you. But when they say, hey, come on, man, calm down, man. This is only practice, man. Relax. That's not going to be healthy for anybody, especially the win-loss record at the end of the season. So you can't afford to take off one play. So isn't that an interesting conversation that you can change the mindset in your office? If you're in a call center, was that one of the 6 plays? Is that going to make a sale? What are you going to do? I mean, I tell a story about customer service. I've gone over 10 million miles on Delta, 6 million on their frequent flyer program. They met me at the airport to celebrate my 6 million miles with a cake and some balloons. I'm like, thanks, way to splurge there, Ed Bastian. Thanks.
Yeah,
I got
Ed.
some little picture. They finally sent me a cool bag, leather bag. But I tell the story about customer service. Delta Airlines is clearly the best airline on the planet, and because I've one of the top 1% flyers, I have access to special member services, an 800 number where they suck up, no matter what they suck up. And I've never missed a speech since 1982. I've had flights cancel. I've had to rent a car, drive 7 hours through the Badlands of Nebraska to make a speech in Rapid City, South Dakota. I've told that story in your podcast before. I'm proud of that fact. Never missed a speech. So I'm in a dilemma. I got to get to Washington, D.C., and my flight into Washington National Airport, Reagan National, is canceled. So I call the 800 number special member service. Lady answers. I said, this is what I need you to do. I'm here. I need you to get me a flight here, and I need you to get me to Washington National by that time. She goes, I'm sorry, Mr. Clark, we can't do that. Now, back in the day, we take a lot of pride in our persuasive skills. I thought I could use my charm to fast talk her into doing everything I needed her to do. But now I've learned the lesson. I've never got anybody to change their mind ever. And so I just basically gracefully hung up. I said, okay, thank you. And out of curiosity, in which call center are you working? She said, Cincinnati. I said, thanks. I hung up. I immediately dialed back the same 800 number. A different operator, a different Delta agent answered with a perceptible accent. I gave her the exact same scenario, the exact same ask. I need to do this. I need to go here. I need to go there. I need to get to Washington National by such a time so I can make my speech. She goes, Mr. Clark, we can do that. Hold on. Brief hold. I hear the computer. She comes back. She goes, okay, it's taken care of. Check your email for confirmation. I said, thank you so much. Out of curiosity, which call center are you working? She said, India. So the lady in Cincinnati took her United States of America freedom for granted. She took our free market system for granted. She took her job for granted. She didn't give a rat's wackazoodle about anybody. I'm off. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. The woman in India, she cherished her job. Her job allows her family to have a completely different lifestyle. Her children can go to the very best schools available. All of her hard work in learning English pays off. And she didn't take one thing for granted. She had no entitlement mentality like the lady in Cincinnati did. She had an opportunity mentality. I'm so grateful. And they received the exact same training from Delta Airlines, the exact same computer software system. One said yes, the other one said no. One took the play off, which gives me the story to tell the world, and the other one rose to the occasion and became my hero.
One made you think about utilizing a competitive airline. One made you a customer for life.
Yeah, and one made me feel like I should track down her manager and vet her so she can have her little flipping butt put in a sling and either fix what's broken or go work for some other airline that doesn't give a
Right.
flip.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So this is the thing. These are the stories. This is what you get in the art of significance. And if I could just boil it down, you can't take a play off. That's the message. You can't take a play off, and that's
With your kids, with
that's
your spouse.
That's in your life. That's in your work.
How many
that's in your
times how old are your kids
physical
now?
Fitness.
How old are your kids now?
21-year-old twins and an 18-year-old.
Okay, wouldn't we both give anything
Yes.
to just have one of them run into our study, our bedroom one day, and Daddy, will you play ball with me?
Yeah.
And instead of saying I don't have time, I
Yeah.
can't.
I know.
You know, I've got grandkids now that come in and say, Papa, and I drop everything.
Right.
And say, come over here, Cora. Let me read you a story. Let me take you on an adventure. Let's
Yeah.
make up something. Let's go play ball. Let's go do some whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, Dad, will you take my daughter to gymnastics or to dance? I'm like, absolutely. I drop everything because
yeah.
that time will quickly fade away.
And you're absolutely right. This is we have a different perspective now than people who aren't in the same experience. But I've never felt better about myself when I took the time to read the whole Shel Silverstein book.
Isn't that
Everybody
cool?
sitting around, like
You got it.
and we still remember. And when you hear those poems and we hear that, it's nostalgic. It brings back all of the flood. And I've never felt worse about myself when I look back and say, oh, why didn't I took that play off? I
know.
took that play off.
And when we sit next to each other, I get emotional when they play the Star Spangled Banner.
I do too.
I always get emotional for the first kickoff of the game because I would give anything to just
I
run
know.
down one more time where it counted and it mattered because it was taken away from me way before I was ready.
Yeah.
And I actually get angry inside, not verbal, but I say, why are these guys taking this for granted?
Oh, if it's one message I could ever, when I visit with teams, when I talk to teams, if I could reach one guy with, this is at some point, by the way, everybody thinks that they've been retired too early. It doesn't matter who Michael Jordan thinks
exactly.
he had to retire too early. But if I could get that message to one guy, cherish every single rep that you get, because at some point you don't get to do that again. You don't get to run out onto the field with the marching band
Or
and the
you
bands
don't
and everyone
get to hug your kid, or you don't get
Yes.
to go to a dance concert, or you don't get to take your wife on a hot date.
Yeah, all of those things. Well, we're going to book number 3. I told
do
you
it.
I could do that. We're going to book number 3 because I'd love
just
to
love
go
talking
through
to you, man.
chapter by chapter. I think it's fascinating, and I think we've given listeners enough that, look, if you want a blueprint for life, the art of significance provides a blueprint. It's fascinating. It's entertaining. I have the hard copy. I have the Audible version. Dan narrates the Audible. It's really good. And one thing I love about Dan is he always has, I've never heard him without like a coach's voice. It always feels like he's in mid-season. Yes,
That's
coaches.
3 throat surgeries from my COVID days. Let me just, kind of come clean. I hope I don't offend any of your viewers. I just want you to know, I always tell it like it is, my experience. I'm not going to blow smoke up your nose. For example, there's 3 things that never lie. A young toddler, a person who is drunk, and yoga pants. And if you'll allow me to be honest at all times, every human being, I'm not judgmental, and sometimes I'm a little twisted in my sense of humor, and
Well, now I can't stop thinking about you in yoga pants, unfortunately.
that's why I don't wear them.
Yeah.
I've spent enough on Lululemon, but it's not those skin tight little, that's just not me, baby.
Okay, I'm going to give you this one opportunity before I let you go and before we book round 3. Leave us with one more story.
So my dad battled cancer for 6.5 years. Stories in my book. So my dad battled cancer for 6.5 years, and for some reason I wanted to be by his bedside when he took his last breath, and that didn't happen for me. So I was up in Seattle, Washington for 2 days to make 2 speeches to 2 large trade associations downtown at the convention center, and I'm staying out of town at the Seattle Airport Marriott Hotel. Friday morning, October 12th, I'm ready for the day. Phone rings. I think it's my ride downtown to the convention center, so I pick up the phone and I almost flippantly say, I'll be right there. But for some odd reason, I just stood there. 15 seconds of silence later, my younger brother's voice pierces the quietness of the call. Danny? I said, what's up, Paul? He said, Dad died this morning at 7 a.m. I said, whoa. Sat down on the edge of my bed and the tears just started to fall. Let me interrupt. I'd give anything to have my dad back one more day, and it's too late. I have regrets, which we've been talking about a little bit. I'd give anything to just tell my dad I love him again. I'd give anything to spend more time with him when I blew him off, when I had something more important to do. As an author, my favorite interview is always with an elderly person, elderly meaning someone older than me. And they will always remind us they do not have regrets for things they did do. They only have regrets for things they did not do. Will you? Mm-hmm. As we've been talking about. My brother says, I asked my brother, how's mom? He says, she's all right. I said, give her a big hug and a kiss for me. Will you please tell her I'll phone her as quickly as I can? And then he asks me the gajillion-dollar question. What are you going to do? Let me interrupt. When I'm speaking to businesses, a competitive advantage is never created by doing more than your competition. It's created by doing what your competition is not willing to do. So he asked me, what are you going to do? I said, well, Dad and Mom have spent an entire lifetime teaching us to keep our promises, to only make commitments that we can keep. And in our religious tradition, I believe that my dad is now out of his cancer pain. He's in a better place than we are, and I'm going to see him again. So I said, Paul, Dad and Mom have spent an entire lifetime teaching us to keep our promises. I'm going to go keep my commitment. I'm going to go speak. That's what Dad would want me to do. And I can't imagine what it would be like to be a meeting planner with a 90-minute slot to fill 3,500 people in the audience and not have the speaker show. I can't leave someone hanging. I need to keep my good name intact, so I'm going to make my speech today. I'm going to spend the night, and then I'm going to keep my commitment to speak tomorrow. Then I'm going to hustle home. God knows I need your support. Hopefully I can give you some of mine. I hung up the phone with my brother, and I sat there, and I openly wept like a wee child. This is my dad, my hero. And as I shared one of my favorite songs I wrote about my dad, special man, any male can be a father, but it takes a special man to be a dad. That's my dad, that's my hero. 15 minutes later, the phone rings again. This time it is my ride. I tell him I'll be right down. I go into the washroom, my hotel room, I splash some water in my face, try to freshen up to the best of my ability. I leave my hotel room and I get on the elevator. And as the elevator doors start to close, the corner of the bellman's cart nudges its way through the opening and they bing back open. And on the elevator comes this way overzealous psycho bellman, pushing this runaway cart onto the elevator. Woo-hoo-hoo! Forces me back to the right rear corner of the elevator, and I assume the elevator position. Mm-hmm. As the doors close, we start going down, and he is relentless. Whoa! Did you see the beautiful sunshine? He said, I've lived up here in Seattle, Washington, 15 years. You must have brought the good weather with you. What's your name? How you doing? I said, I'm Dan Clark, and I'm fine. And you know when someone's been staring at you for a while and you don't even have to get eye contact, you can just kind of feel it, kind of sense it. All of a sudden he says, hey, Mr. Clark, you're not fine. You've been crying. I said, yeah. I said, I just found out my dad died this morning and I'm really sad. He said, whoa. Elevator comes to the lobby, doors open. He goes his way. I meet my ride. He drives me downtown to the convention center. I'm introduced and I make my speech. I had to dig deeper than I'd ever dug in my whole entire life to make that speech. But you can if you think you can. A great quote. When your attitude's right, your abilities will always catch up. We always talk about when your why is bigger than your why not, you can figure out what to do. I got to the end of my speech and I said to the audience, I'd like to conclude with a little song from one of my albums. And I said, the reason why I want to sing this little song is because my dad died this morning and this is the first time he's ever heard me sing it in public. And again, I dug deep, sang the song maybe better than I'd ever sung it before. I concluded my speech, and I had the driver take me back to the Seattle Airport Marriott Hotel. And when I walked into my hotel room, there on the dresser of drawers is a basket of fruit. And it's not your basic basket of fruit delivered from the hotel gift shop. We've all seen these little color cellophane little bow, little sterile stamp card. They never get our names right. Thanks for staying with us, Sergio. This was the coolest gift I'd ever received. It was a broken, smushed basket. One side was completely caved in. It looked like it was someone's second thought, maybe after hours, no resources available, but they still wanted to make a difference. And I can just visualize this hotel employee walking through the lobby. They look in the garbage bin. They're like, whoa, this is too good to throw away. Frank Dolce would be really impressed with, really impressed with me. Do more with less. They retrieved it and took it to my room. And whoever delivered it was obviously in a presentation because they turned the broken smush part of the basket towards the wall. And whoever delivered it also must have walked past that big fake tree in the lobby because they yanked off one of those fine rubberized leaves, stuck that in front of the broken smush part of my basket. In my basket of fruit, there was a tomato and a big giant carrot and a handwritten card that said, "Mr. Clark, I'm sure sorry your dad died. I'm supposed to get off work at 5 o'clock. I've asked to stay on all day and all night so I can be here just for you. Room service closes at 10 o'clock. The kitchen has agreed to stay open all night long so they can be here just for you. If you need anything, just call and ask for me. Signed, James, the bellman in the elevator." And he's not the only guy who signed my little card. Every single hotel employee that night at the Seattle Airport Marriott Hotel signed my little card. I had it matted and framed. It's still hanging on my office wall to this day. So I like to debrief. Here we have the youngest person in the entire employee payroll who seemingly gets it. Guess what? Age has nothing to do with turning your success into significance, making sure you don't just get what you want, what you think you want at the moment, but you want what you get so you don't die with your music still in you. Here we have the lowest paid person in the entire employee payroll who reminds us that money's not a motivator. If money is the topic of conversation, if you're a sales professional, if money's the topic of conversation, if you're going into a bank and you're talking about interest rates, if money is the topic of conversation, it means the presentation is weak and the relationship is non-existent. And the last thing I learned was loyalty, referral, reputation, all the things that really matter most. Because every single time I speak in Seattle, Washington, I always stay at the Seattle Airport Hotel, even if I have to rent a car and drive an hour and a half out of my own expense to stay loyal to the brand Marriott, to stay loyal to Bill Marriott, who was one of my dad's great friends, who coined the phrases, "Success is never final, but more importantly, when you take care of the employee will take care of the customer. Competitive advantage is never created by doing more than your competition. It's created by doing what your competition is not willing to do." That's not a Bill Marriott, that's a Dan Clark, but it coincides with what we're talking about. You can get anything in this life that you want if you're willing to help enough other people get what they want. Zig Ziglar. Dan Clark, wealth flows through you, not to you. What are you willing to do to help someone else so they leave you saying, "I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again." I could go on and on. They all seem to integrate and amalgamate into my message. Because every time I speak, I'm always relegated to stay at the property where they have the meeting, and it's always at a posh hotel where the towels in my room are so fluffy I have a hard time getting my suitcase closed. Do you have that? You find that when you travel? But every time I speak in Seattle, I stay at the Seattle Airport Marriott so I can just stay loyal to that brand and bring back the memory of that day where I was as low as I could possibly be. I was devastated. I had to persevere. I had to stretch. I had to fire up. And this young 18-year-old man came to the rescue to allow me to have the emotional stability and the intestinal fortitude and feeling of support to just step and do what I knew I needed to do. And my dream as a professional speaker is that someday I'm going to be speaking and I'll tell that story and an African-American young man's going to jump from the audience and say, "I'm James, thanks for remembering me. I'm CEO of this corporation.
Right.
And I'll give you a ride home in my private jet." I really believe that's going to happen before I die because he's out there somewhere, and I know he's extraordinarily significant.
Well, what a great way to wrap up this discussion, because that is the art of significance.
And each of us, if we just keep our heads on a linebacker swivel all day long to find out where we can turn our success into significance, what could we do to help? Put your freaking phone down, and don't go build schools in Kenya. Teenagers, when there's a kid in your classroom right now at Olympus High School who's thinking about killing himself, and if you just paid attention to their eyes, paid attention to their energy, their vibration, paid attention to their soul, ask them about them. Are you okay? Can I help you? What can I do? You could be significant in that moment and change someone's stars forever. It's just about being present in the moment, and that's what significance is really about.
I'm so glad you said that, and I hope this is not controversial, but there is enough service within 5 miles to take up a lifetime rather than...
I've been privileged enough to
Everything
raise
is.
millions of dollars in charity and served on the Make-A-Wish Foundation board and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, that's the message. Look in your own home. Look at your cousins, your siblings. Ask your mom how she's doing. I just stayed to help her cry. Human touch.
Mm-hmm.
Can I tell one last story?
Absolutely.
Okay, it's the ultimate human in my mind is an altruistic egoist, all taking and all giving. That if you want to bake bread and go down to the end of the block and knock on the widow's door and spend an hour with her on a Sunday afternoon, she doesn't need the calories of the bread. She craves the conversation and the feeling of we love you, we notice you, we admire you. But why do we do that? Because it makes us feel better. It feels good. And so it's okay to be all giving and all taking. It's okay to have that ancillary benefit of service before self, because both the giver and the receiver of service benefit. We both rise. So back in the day, we had Crossroads Mall. It was on Main Street and State Street. I mean, Main Street, first West Temple. And I had a business meeting in that mall this one day, and it was a blizzard. Snow was blowing sideways. It was so frickin' cold. And I drove around the block twice looking for a parking spot, and I found one clear on the other side over in West Temple. And so I'm weathering the storm. I'm battling the breeze. The snow's piercing my skin. It was that brutal of a snowstorm. I had no overcoat. And I've got the headwind, and I come around the corner, and I get to the entrance of Crossroads Mall, and the two side doors are locked, and the only entrance into the mall is the circular revolving door. And because it's a circular door, one person at a time, there are 9 people standing in line waiting their turn to enter into the warmth of the Crossroads Mall. And standing by the door is the Salvation Army bell ringer, the red bucket, the bell, all bundled up in the blizzard. And as I'm standing there in the back of the line, I have enough time to see a man who is homeless. Let me interrupt. You never put the emphasis on the disability or the challenge. You put the emphasis on the human being. You never say the blind guy. You say the gentleman who is blind. You never say the homeless guy. You say the gentleman who happens to be homeless, or the gentleman who happens to come on hard times. So on purpose, I say, all of a sudden out of the foggy day and the blizzard snowstorm, a gentleman who is homeless emerges, no overcoat. I remember his Converse shoes and his big toes protruding out of the hole in the front. And he walks up to the bell ringer, and he reaches in his pocket, pulls it inside out, and verbally, and with enough time to watch him, he counts 93 cents and puts everything he had into the bucket. Walks away, says, "Merry Christmas, lad," and disappears into the foggy day. From that day, I've never, ever walked past a homeless person. I've never judged them. Yeah, get a job. If I give you money, you're just mentally ill. You're just going to buy drugs or alcohol. Get a job. Come on. I refuse to judge. And so at the beginning of the day, I'll go to an ATM, and I'll always get $10. And then I'll cash it in for $1 bills. And you never want to pull out all 10 $1 bills at the same time, or people think you're a stripper. These were the lame tips that I got because I'm such a wuss. But it's nothing, and it has nothing to do with the person who's homeless. Every single one I pass, I give them $1 until the $10 is up, and I do that every single day. And it's not for them; it changes my mindset immediately. So everybody knows I'm a devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I remember we were going to a wedding at the Salt Lake Temple. And I took all my kids, my son and my 3 daughters, and they were young. And so when you go to the temple and you're not allowed into the temple for the wedding ceremony, you stay in the waiting room outside. And then when the bride and groom come outside, we have the pictures, and clap and throw the rice, whatever you want to do. It's just the same. It's just a different. And for the record, once you go into the temple, it's not secret, it's sacred. So, get over it if you have some challenges there. So we parked across the street under the conference center. We emerge. So we're on the north side of North Temple. And as you walk across that crosswalk at the gates of Temple Square, there's always the same woman. Always. The sign. And so when we got out of the car, and it was a beautiful day, and we're going to a wedding to watch the bride and groom come out of the temple, I give each of my kids $1 because they know the story. And we're walking across the crosswalk. I said, "Whose turn is it?" And my oldest daughter, Nicholas, she says, "It's mine." She steps up to the lady and she says, "I hope you're having a wonderful day. You know, may I give you this $1?" And she says, "Thank you so much." And then we turn the corner. We go down to the other end of the temple square before you turn right to go south to go into the entrance of the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another lady. She's always there, and she's asleep. And my youngest daughter, it's her turn, and she goes, "What should I do, Daddy?" And I said, "I don't know, figure it out." So she woke her up, this lady who's homeless. She wakes her up and gives her the $1. So now we get to the gates of the temple, and I stopped my family, and I said, "Let's turn around and let's watch." And every single person, there must have been 25, who are going into the temple supposedly to serve God and to serve their fellow men and women, walked past the homeless. And that was a perfect teaching moment for my children, saying, what does it mean to really be a Christian? I mean, why are we so caught up in these religious titles? Why can't we just understand the significance of taking care of those who are struggling? And I remember teaching them that, and I've regurgitated it many times, that had nothing to do with the person who was homeless. It changed my attitude so that when I'm walking in that temple, my mindset and my heart set is exactly where it's supposed to be. And giving $1 to someone who's homeless, who might just have a bigger bank account than mine because of all the rumors about the scams, I don't ever want to go there again. And I met a gentleman who was homeless, Steve. He was always at the exit of the McDonald's on 5th South. And I remember the first time I'm pulling out, and I still got $5 from the $10 commitment that day, $5. I said, "Hey, man, come here." He comes to the window. I said, "What's your name?" He said, "Steve." I said, "Here's $5. I want you to go in and buy yourself a Happy Meal." He goes, "They won't let me in there because I'm homeless. They won't let me in." I'm like, "Well, I'll take you in there." So I park my car, and I take him in there, and I buy him a meal. One of the most interesting guys I've ever met. He's got a PhD. He's an alcoholic. His wife left him, and he lost his job because of his alcoholism. He just hit the skids. But what an intelligent, just interesting human being. And any one of us could have had that happen to us in our lives, and how would we have reacted? I mean, the poor guy, I'm not going to judge him. And so I would see him so often during the week, maybe 2 or 3 times on purpose, when I was still drinking, 44-ounce Diet Cokes, not from McDonald's, so I'd have to get, like 7 of them. But it was nothing about him. It made me feel so good for the day, because suddenly, from that moment on, I never judged people. And I guess that's just human nature, to judge people. And it changed me for the day. I challenge everybody to just find a trigger in your life that literally wakes you up. My wife and I volunteered at the Primary Children's Hospital for over 2 years. We'd come on Sunday mornings, and then we'd come on Tuesday evenings. And we would just visit the sick. And I remember the first day we were there in training, this is what you say. When you're in the hospital, you don't say to someone, "Have a nice day," and their child's dying of cancer. We had to be politically correct. They coached us on this. And so when I got there's 4 floors in the Primary Children's Hospital at the University of Utah campus. And I said to my wife, "We're never taking the elevator. We're going to walk up the 4 stories, the 4 floors every day. I'm going to use a little cardiovascular or whatever." Yeah. And on Sunday mornings, they have a non-denominational fellowship service from 10:30 in the morning until 11. Play a few common hymns that every religious tradition would recognize. And it's kind of an opportunity, kind of open mic night. We call it a testimony meeting, where you can share your strength. And this mother stands up and says, "We believe in miracles. We've been here for 119 days, and our daughter first blinked her eye, and we're so grateful." And we're like, "Oh." Wow. But here's my point. We're, as volunteers, service missionaries, if you will, we are supposed to take our seats at the back rows of the theater so that all the sick folks and families can come in and fill in the first rows of this theater. And I've been walking up and down those 4 levels, 4 floors at the Primary Children's Hospital that first Sunday for probably 3 hours, because we got there at 7 in the morning. We start visiting rooms at like 8 or whatever. And my knees, like I said, they were so bad. I can climb, but going down was hard. And my back, I broke my back ski racing, ski jumping, and I have a 4th and 5th lumbar vertebrae in my body overcompensated with muscularity around there, and that muscle gets in a big knot, and it just hurts so bad. And I was a hot mess, man. I sat down in the back row before anybody came into the theater, and I said to my wife, this is brutal, man. My body hurts so bad. My back is killing me. My knees are killing me. I don't know if I like this. And all of a sudden, the first little girl who enters this theater is 13 years old, bald head because of chemotherapy, pushing her own intravenous tower, and she sits down on the front row.
Mm-hmm.
Next little girl is pushed in a wheelchair. Next family comes in, sick children, and I lean over to my mom. You know how emotional, my wife, you know how emotional I am. I have a tear, and I'm like, I will never complain again as long as I live. I have no right to complain about my body. They're dying of cancer, and we got to be here for them. So it's those moments that we need to look for on a daily basis to trigger our conscience and connect our head with our heart and say, wait a minute, man, how dare you complain? You're alive. You are enough. Let's just get better. Yeah. So, and those experiences are all around us. One of my most famous stories I'd love to tell next time we're on the air is when I gave up my seat, my first class seat, to a soldier, and the domino effect that it had with other folks in first class.
Yeah.
I got so many stories where you just look for ways and times in your day to convert your success to significance and see how it makes you feel. See how it changes your life. And you don't have to be a public speaker or a storyteller to do that. Just live life. Just be there for the world and be there for yourself, and it's amazing what happens.
Well, I'm guilty of it as much as anybody, just being in my own head and all of my own issues and all of my own problems. And if we could recognize that someone else needs a broken basket with a tomato and a carrot, then maybe we could figure some things out.
Yeah. And let's not pretend to be somebody that we're not. Let's make sure we're exactly the same as people think we are. Back to that temple story, 25 hypocrites going in to serve their Lord,
right.
And they walk past the homeless, and I'm like, come on, baby. And I'm not self-righteous. There's no one more self-righteous than the newly converted. Please don't think I'm a prude. I've got more challenges, and I make more mistakes than anybody listening. So please don't ever get the idea that I'm trying to preach. But I've decided many years ago that I can't just practice what I preach. I must preach only what I practice, and that forces me to walk on higher ground. And that's kind of my own personal mantra for the day. Who are you going to be today for somebody else? And hopefully, because of karma, someone will be that person for someone else, and we can start that domino butterfly effect and change the world.
Let's do that. Let's do that today. Let's go out and preach what we practice. Yeah. Dan, it's always fascinating. I always wish we had more time. I've already taken more than half of your day.
I love you, man.
You're the best.
You're good.
And we're gonna get round 3 going, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. You're the best. I love you. Thank you. Please come back and see us again. We'll get in the We'll get in the big room.
And let's pray for BYU so that when we tee it up at Utah Stadium this year, that they come with their very best A game. So when we beat them by 40 points, it really means something.
It really it really means something. Absolutely. That's something we can all agree on. There he is. Art of Significance, Dan Clark.
Thanks, Franco.
Thank you for listening to the Know Your Ship podcast presented by eHub. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.